What's up and good morning, War Report family. We're talking quarterback this morning. Can Auburn win 8 games without a 3,000-yard passer? Let's drop it on them.
You are now listening to the War Report. Drop.
What's up, War Report family? It's your boy Mike G. I'm here with my guy Ike Jones. It's Thursday, June the 22nd, the year of our Lord 2023. We're talking quarterback this morning. Before we get into it, guys, you know the drill. Share this video. Use @the War Report and hashtag Get Your Weight Up on social media. Let people know where you guys are getting the best Auburn content. Also, please hit like and subscribe for us. This helps us out in the algorithm so people can find our content a little bit easier. You can check us out on social media @the War Report on IG and Twitter, TW Report on TikTok. Also want to thank show sponsor The Rogue Shop for sponsoring this segment. As always, they're a great sponsor. RogueShop.com. Use code REPORT to get 15% off that Rogue Shop order. Stress, sleep, anxiety, pain, the Rogue Shop has you covered. Also want to thank Harmon Mechanical for sponsoring this segment. Visit harmonmechanical.com or call 334-219-0717 so they can come out and make sure that you stay cool this summer. It's humid down south. Harmon Mechanical is keeping you cool. Again, we're talking quarterback this morning. The topic, can Auburn win 8 games without a 3,000-yard passer? This has not been a common occurrence in Auburn football history.
Has not, yeah.
Yeah. Producing 3,000-yard passers has not been a thing. But it seems like it's essential for competing for the SEC title. The last quarterback to not throw for 3,000 yards, but when the SEC was Jalen Hurts a long time ago. So what do you think? What do you think about Hugh Freeze? Is Hugh Freeze going to be able to produce a 3,000-yard passer in year one?
I mean, it's possible to do it. I think that this definitely has the earmarks on this offense say that, yes, it can happen. I think that there's enough talent in the wide receiver room to make it happen. It's just really going to come down to that offensive line and the decision-making of the quarterback. But can it happen? Yeah, absolutely. I don't see a reason why it could not. Because this system allows for it. Like when we talk about Auburn history and how infrequent it's happened, I don't think Auburn has had systems that were set up to allow for passers to do that, right? Jared Stidham was the only guy in recent history that's done it.
He's the best pure passer in Auburn history.
Yeah.
If you ask me.
I just don't know that system-wise there has been anything that's allowed it, right? We know the history of 3 yards in the cloud of dust of Auburn. And then when you get into the Malzahn years where it wasn't necessarily that, it was still very run heavy. So there hasn't been a lot of throwing it around the yard in Auburn history. This is a coach that can do it system wise, including Philip Montgomery from the offensive coordinator standpoint. So can it happen this year? Possible for sure.
Well, let's talk numbers for a second. There were 5 3,000-yard passers in the SEC last year. The conference with the most was the Pac-12. They had 8. 8 teams in the Pac-12 had 3,000-yard passers. I believe Michael Penix led the group. Obviously, Caleb Williams was up there because he won the Heisman.
Yeah.
But this is something. But outside of the SEC and the Pac-12, no conference had more than 3. And if you look at the teams that won their conferences, 2 won their conferences without a 3,000-yard passer. And neither of those teams made the playoff. So the Pac-12 champion, obviously, and Kansas State in the Big 12, because TCU went on to the playoff even though they lost the Big 12 title game. So there's definitely a correlation between being able to pass the ball effectively at a certain clip. Now, a 3,000-yard passer would mean a 1,000-yard improvement for Auburn year over year. Is that a reasonable expectation? 1,000 yards of improvement in year one.
I actually don't think it's unreasonable. Like if you look at what we were able to do late season in the run game versus what we were doing early season in the run game, we're just talking about a sample size of 4 games. There's a drastic difference in just those 4 games within the same season in the run side of the ball. I don't think that it is illogical to think that with a full season with better play calling suited for these athletes that we could make a drastic jump in what we were doing in the past game
Mm-hmm.
year over year. 1,000 yards sprinkled over an entire season isn't even 100 yards per game
Right.
difference, right? So yes, it's possible to do that in one season. Again, if you're factoring in that the scheme will allow for it a little bit more, just because of the type of attempts that we're going to be giving to our quarterbacks, and if our offensive line is as improved as we hope it is, based upon just on paper we think that it is.
Right. Well, let's talk about who passed for 3,000 yards in the SEC last year. Stetson Bennett led the group with 4,127 yards. Will Rogers was right behind him at 3,974 yards. Bryce Young threw for 3,328 yards. Hendon Hooker, 3,135. And Spencer Rattler at 3,026. Now, rounding out the top half, Jackson Dart and Jalen Daniels both fell just short of 3,000 yards at 2,900 and some change. But interestingly enough, Jalen Daniels at number 7, 29-13, they won the West.
Right.
They won the West. They did not win the SEC, though. They did not win the SEC. So do you think, again, I'm going to ask the question, I'm asking a little differently. Do you think it's reasonable because of these, Stetson Bennett doesn't come back. Bryce Young doesn't come back, right? Hendon Hooker is gone. Who's the leading passer in the SEC this year? Is it Will Rogers? Does Will Rogers take the crown?
I mean, so I don't really know what Will Rogers' offense is going to look like as far as attempts, right? Like I mean, attempt wise, I'd be hard pressed. I'm looking at this list. Yeah, he
like
had
50 times a game or something.
He had 600 passing attempts last year. The next highest person, surprisingly, was Stetson Bennett at 454. I would have thought it was going to be Hendon Hooker just because of how much Tennessee throws it around, which is still
he missed
amazing.
a couple games.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. I forgot about that. He was if Hendon Hooker had played those last couple of games, he probably would have been a lot closer to number 2 on that list. But still, Stetson Bennett being number 2 on this list. I mean, even if Will Rogers comes down, 200 attempts closer, because that's about what he'd have to do to come back down to the field. He probably is. I mean, Jaden Daniels would have an opportunity. He was hurt a little bit in the middle of the season last year. Didn't play towards the end of the season as well a little bit. Just nagging injuries with him. Oh gosh, as far as returning guys, KJ Jefferson, I don't see him taking some drastic leap up the numbers there. Spencer Rattler probably is going to be up there as well. So I'd say it's between Will Rogers, Spencer Rattler's, Jaden Daniels, and then whoever the Auburn quarterback is probably going to be in the top 5 in the conference next year, just based upon what I'm thinking here.
Right, because Anthony Richardson is gone. I mean, there's a lot of turnover at quarterback this
Will Rogers
this
gone.
Year.
Freaking who's the kid? Mike, whatever his name is, Mike Wright, Vanderbilt gone. Haynes King, who's the Texas A&M start. Connor Wigman, whoever the start at Texas A&M, I forgot. They're going to have a Petrino offense. They might be able to jump up there in the top 5. So let me not discount that. I am still waiting to see whether or not I actually believe in Joe Milton, the Tennessee guy. Now, Tennessee's going to have an offense. I don't know if I believe in him yet. Big arm, but can he be consistent? We'll see. But yeah, outside of that, I think there's a chance that Auburn could jump up into the top 5 here in passers.
Well, Robbie Ashford came in at 12th with 1,613 yards last year. If he plays full season slate, I'd expect that number to improve drastically. But Peyton Thorne comes in with about 2,600 passing yards from Michigan State from last season, which would have been good for 8th or 9th in the conference, right, in passing last year. Do you think that production is good enough for Auburn to win 8 games? If Peyton Thorne plays or Robbie Ashford improves to Peyton's floor, is that good enough for 8 wins in the SEC?
Yeah, I mean, the initial question was, do we need 3,000? I don't think we need 3,000,
right?
But I think you got to be above 2,500. I think that's if you're not at least, from Robbie Ashford last year, if he's not 1,000 yards better, then I think that 8 wins is going to be. That means that your defense was just freaking lights out, or nobody can stop you from running the ball. Like you're literally putting up like record numbers running the ball in this conference to be able to get to 8 wins without having a passing attack that eclipses 2,500.
Right. There's a couple other correlations I want to talk about when we talk about these numbers. Of the 3,000-yard passers, Bryce Young had the lowest completion percentage at 64.47%.
Mm.
Right. Again, Robbie Ashford came in at 49% last season. Is it realistic to expect mid 60s in terms of completion percentage?
That's the rough number right there,
Yeah.
because he's got a long way to climb from where he was last season, overall. Now,
He was hurt.
again,
Yeah.
shoulder injury aside, Robbie has been an inconsistent thrower pretty much his entire life, right? Can he get to a 60% clip? If he does that with his ability to run, good Lord. Like, I just don't know how you
They'd be
stop a
unstoppable.
young
Yeah.
man that can throw at 60% with that kind of speed, and his fearlessness to kind of, run through guys at the second level. I think that's yet to be seen. I think a lot of it will have to do with the way that it's schemed. And hopefully that the scheme of this offense will allow him to get some quick, easy stuff. And the amount of times that he's having to throw per game is going to be just a manageable amount where he's not expected to go out there and throw for 40. That was the issue that we had a lot with the Bo Nix era. It's just, I think we were asking Bo to throw too much.
Yeah, he threw more than any quarterback in Auburn history.
Yeah, it was kind of ridiculous considering we knew we didn't have a great offensive line. Now, some of it was by necessity because we were playing from behind in games.
For sure.
But there were games where we were in the hunt for it and both threw for he threw 40 times in the game. I'm just like, why are we throwing the ball so much? And his efficiency wasn't ever getting better. So it's just like, we can't keep asking guys to be the hero in scenarios in which we're not setting them up to be successful.
Right. Peyton Thorne brings in a 62.5 completion percentage last year. Obviously, he would have a shorter climb to mid 60s than Robbie would. But either way, I think the expectation is that, whoever is the quarterback gets into the 60s, period, right? Anywhere in the 60s would be a huge improvement for Auburn. A couple of more correlations I want to make. When you look at quarterback rating, right? And this is always an interesting number that's always debated. Hendon Hooker was the highest rated quarterback, had the highest QBR in the league last year at 175. Again, Auburn's quarterback was at 107, so huge climb to try to get into the top 5 there. But of those 3,000-yard passers, again, the lowest rating was Spencer Rattler at 138.74. What is the key to raising the QBR for Auburn's quarterback? Is it easier throws? Is it just, the quarterback themselves being more accurate? Wide receivers running the right routes, or it's a combination of all those things?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a combination of all those things, but I think it's going to start from the quarterback position and the decision making. We talked to Cole Kulick about Peyton Thorne, and one of the things he said is, he remarked on him being in love with a check down, right? Like, listen, take a profit. The old saying is true. You never go broke taking a profit. And if the quarterbacks can just figure out how to, hey, it's 1st and 10. I don't need 10 yards. Let me just get it to somebody and get it to second and manageable. Stay ahead of the change, because that's really the biggest thing when you start talking about what offensive efficiency looks like is figuring out how to get yourself into second and third and manageable, and not feeling like you got to hit a home run every single time you take a snap. If the quarterbacks can be better about figuring out where to go efficiently with the football based upon pre-snap and post-snap reads, then we can get to a higher QBR, just because you're making better decisions and having a better grasp of the offense. But a lot of that does have to do, in this system specifically, chemistry between quarterback and wide receiver, about when they're running this route, when they're running that route, and where they need to be so that the ball is delivered there on time.
Let's talk about protection as it pertains to passing yards, right? Of the quarterbacks that passed for 3,000 yards, the only one that got sacked 30 or more times was Spencer Rattler. He took 31 sacks last season. The guy who led the league in passing yards, unsurprisingly, Stetson Bennett, only got sacked 9 times last year.
Wow.
Him and Haynes King were the least sacked quarterbacks at the league. Haynes King got sacked 7 times. Stetson Bennett got sacked 9 times. And then when you look at the next 3,000-yard passer in terms of sacks, least amount of sacks, Bryce Young came in at number 6, 18 sacks he took. Now, his line was terrible. But I think the only reason this number isn't higher is because he escaped a lot of those sacks himself. Hendon Hooker got sacked 23 times. He had 3,100 yards passing. If Auburn can keep this, let's say Auburn can keep the sacks under 15. Let's just pick a round number here. Does that help the quarterback get into the top 5 in the league at 3,000 yards passing?
It definitely helps. I think the sack statistic is a little misleading though, right? Because you talk about a guy like Stetson Bennett, as you said, that was able to escape pressure, right? So it would have you believe low number of sacks would mean that defenses aren't generating pressure on that quarterback. I think being able to throw when there's pressure around and being able to make the right decision again with check downs or hot reads and that sort of thing is really where you're going to have to live, especially if you're not sure where you're going to be in pass protection for your offense. But 15 or fewer sacks from that offensive line yielded with a bunch of pressure throws doesn't do you any good either, right? So if that 15 number comes as a result of quarterbacks making good decisions, good protection, then absolutely, yes, we can definitely get an increased QBR rating and increased completion percentage, and then therefore higher number of passing yards.
Yeah. Listen, last stat I want to talk about before we get to the break here: interceptions, turnovers, right? Hendon Hooker, man. Whew. Dude, only 2 interceptions on the season. Now he got hurt. Only 2 interceptions on the season.
Yeah.
Spencer Rattler, he again 3,026 passing yards, but 12 interceptions. Right. Robbie Ashford had 7. No quarterback in the league had more than 12 interceptions. As a matter of fact, only 3 were in double digits. Will Levis, Jackson Dart, and Spencer Rattler. Everybody else was single digits in terms of interceptions. Obviously protection plays into this. It looks like there's a pretty strong correlation between, protecting the ball and, passing at a high clip. Do you think, my last question, unrelated to passing yards, but, what is a good goal for Auburn's quarterback this year in terms of turnovers? Peyton Thorne had 11 interceptions last season, which would put him near the bottom of the SEC in terms of interceptions because Will Levis, Jackson Dart, and Rattler both had 10, 11, and 12 respectively. How much does Peyton Thorne or Robbie Ashford have to improve on that interception number for Auburn to find success through the air?
I think it's more of a ratio thing for me, right? Like a touchdown to interception ratio.
Sure.
As long as you're not hurting the team more so or equivalent to the number of times that you're helping them with passing the ball, right? So 3-1 is really, kind of a sweet spot to be. 2-1 is probably more realistic.
Yeah.
But if you're, a 20 plus touchdown per on the season, then double-digit interceptions is okay. Inopportune times will kind of dictate that. But if we're talking about where I would love for them to be, 10 or fewer, right? Like I would love to have sub double-digit interception year from the quarterback position.
Look, Anthony Richardson, Will Rogers led the league in touchdowns and touchdown interception ratio at 35 touchdowns to 8 interceptions.
Which is insane with the number of attempts that he had. Insane.
Right. Bryce Young only had 5 picks, but he had 32 touchdowns. So it's pretty close. Actually, the ratio looks pretty close there. And I'm sorry, Hendon Hooker obviously won the touchdown to interception ratio at 27-2.
Yeah.
All right. So, like I said, there is a correlation between turnovers and where these teams finished, right? Protecting the football obviously is going to be an important thing for Hugh Freeze's offense in year 1 if they're going to win what I assume are going to be close games. Also, it's going to be important to protect your AC with Harmon Mechanical, harmonmechanical.com. Call 334-219-0717. Servicing the Auburn area. They're keeping you cool this summer. Harmon Mechanical. Love them for sponsoring the War Report. We appreciate their support. Also, RogueShop.com. They've been a segment sponsor for a long time. Please go support them. RogueShop.com. Use code REPORT for 15% off that next Rogue Shop order. Sleep, stress, pain, anxiety. The Rogue Shop has you covered. RogueShop.com. Use code REPORT. Get 15% off that next order. Let's get to some comments here. You guys have been commenting, some great comments. I see the Cube Show has joined us. Our guy Cole Kublik. He said it depends on the defense to me. That dictates how high risk the offense has to be. What do you think about this?
Yeah, that's 100%. Of course, Cole knows what he's talking about, but like you know, when I expect, and we've talked about this over and over, I expect defenses are going to come out and tell Auburn, you're not going to run the ball.
Right.
By the front and by the look. They're going to tell you, hey, we're going to make you throw the ball. The question is how much they're going to challenge on the outside to me. If they're going to give cushion, then Coach Freeze, Coach Montgomery are going to say, hey, we're just going to utilize that, and we're going to take the quick, easy stuff to chip away at it and make you guys come up and play us a little differently. And then we're going to try to stretch them horizontally and try to get them playing wider so that we can then run some stuff up the middle. But yeah, the defense is going to dictate a lot of this stuff. And how efficient can we be with being able to challenge them on the outside, I think is going to help to determine what it's going to look like for number of completions or even number of attempts that we're going to have in a particular game.
Appreciate the Cube Show for joining us this morning. AU Alum 94, we've had 2 3,000-yard passers in AU history, Damian Craig and Jared Stidham. Don't have to have 3,000 yards to win 8 for sure. I'll take 2,200 yards plus.
What I'll say in regard to this is football's changing, right? So the years of being able to throw for sub 25 and get to 8 wins, I don't know that we're in that same place anymore. Defensive lines across this conference are built a little bit better to stop the run. Think about the Arkansas team last year. How many games did Arkansas win last year?
That's a great question. Let's see here. KJ Jefferson and Arkansas. The Razorbacks in 2022 went 7-6.
Okay. They're a prime example of what I'm talking about with a team. Now, KJ Jefferson threw for 2,500 yards, just north 2648, just north of that 2,500 yard mark that I was talking about. But they were a dynamic running, like their offense ran based on their ability to run the ball and the quarterback running, right? Still didn't get to 8 wins. It's just,
Right.
It's a different league right now, and defenses in this league are not the same as they were once before. And I don't think that offensive lines are built the same way that they were before. I don't think that in this era of college football, it's an easy proposition to say you're going to have a sub 2,500 passer and have an 8-win team. It's not impossible. It's not likely in this era of college football.
I mean, listen, it's pretty tough. Again, there is a strong correlation between reaching that 3,000-yard mark and being in contention. Again, even LSU, who won the West, still right under 3,000, right at 29-13 in terms of, Jaden Daniels became a better passer as the season went along, right? They struggled early. I was surprised at Will Levis's numbers, man. For a guy who everybody was predicting to go first round.
I mean, he did. He was hurt for a couple of games, so I'll give him that. But listen, if you guys listen to me talk preseason last year, I was never sold on Will. I was never bought in on Will Levis. He's got to prove something to me at the next level. And I just don't think that that's a thing that he's going to be able to do. But hey, listen, Will, go out there and prove me wrong, sir. But I ain't believing yet.
Yeah, let's see here. Chris S. For reference, 2009 we had 2,600 yards, 33 points per game, 7 wins, terrible defense. That was the year of the Todd, wasn't it? That was Chris Todd's year, 2009. And Todd set an Auburn record for passing touchdowns that season, if I'm not mistaken. This was
Chris
the first
Todd,
year.
22 touchdowns that year. 6 interceptions, and threw for 2,600 yards.
Yeah, he was underrated. He was underrated. I remember because that bowl game was that crazy bowl game versus Northwestern. And they ended up pulling out the win. But 2,600 yards, 33 points. That was the year, first year of Gus's offense. Now, it should be noted, and I think you made a good point earlier, the game has changed quite a bit since then. So expecting those numbers to hold and be successful means a lot of things around the quarterback has to be successful for you to reach that number. But it feels like more teams, Ike, are leaning on the quarterback to do more these days. Bryce Young got asked of him last year. And I thought that he deserved, to go as high as he did in the draft based on what he accomplished, based on the lack of protection he had. So Daniel Owen says, I think having 3,000 yard passer would be the difference between a good first season for Freeze and a memorable one. How memorable will it be?
I can agree with that. If you have a 3K passer with, again, what I expect from our running game. If you pair a 3,000-yard passer with that, then you are in for a very memorable season. So I agree with that statement wholeheartedly, Daniel.
Jonathan Boyson comes in and says, absolutely, it could happen if we have over 3,000 yard passer. Then I think at least 9 wins.
Yeah, I mean, I can get on board with this. Now, a lot of this is, of course, factoring in. Here's the reality of a lot of situations too. It's possible to move the ball a bunch and not score touchdowns.
Yeah, that's true.
It's possible to score a bunch of points and give up a bunch of points too, right? So, we're putting a lot of this on offense, and I hope that we can get into a more ball control scenario with this offensive line if we have leads, and just be able to, because what I don't want to have happen is a bunch of 2021 Mississippi State games where offense looks great and then stalls to a halt, and the other team just kind of marches it down the field, and then we're not able to possess the ball enough to stop that onslaught in the second half of games. But yeah, I would agree with this. 3,000 yards with what I expect our running game to be. 9 wins is definitely possible.
Okay, for a reference though, 5 3,000-yard passes in the SEC last season: Stetson Bennett, Will Rogers, Bryce Young, Hendon Hooker, Spencer Rattler. Of those 5, I think Bama got to 9 wins, Tennessee got to 9 wins, and Georgia got to 9 wins. I don't believe Mississippi State and South Carolina got to 9 wins.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think both of them were 7 wins.
Actually, no. Mississippi State got to 9 wins.
They won 9 games last year?
9-4.
Oh, wow.
9-4 in 2022. So that only leaves South Carolina, and I'm pretty sure they didn't get the 9 wins. So, so there is a strong correlation between this. Could be accurate, right? Of all the teams that did it, only one didn't hit 9 wins. So we'll see if they can do that. But can we afford to not be run heavy given our running back room? This is going to be an interesting question. Hugh Freeze has produced at least an 800-yard receiver, and each of his seasons coaching or he averages that. Is it going to be run heavy? Because we know he wants to throw the ball.
I mean, run heavy, you'd have to define that for me, right? Like if we're saying more tilted towards the run, I would say probably so, but can we afford not to? I think the answer to that is yes, just because turning around and handing the ball to the running back is not the only way that running back is going to be able to be involved. I think your running back needs to be heavily involved in the offense in both the run and the screen game. But I don't know that it needs to be imbalanced towards the run significantly in order for you to be successful and still be able to keep all of those running backs feeling as if they're contributing.
Ant Robinson says 1,000-yard rusher and 2,500-yard passer will be great. We agree. Listen, get north of 2,500, and it's definitely an improvement. Ed Darby comes and says Yak will get you to 3,000 yards. This is truth.
Yeah.
Right. Short passes and receivers who can shake off a defender and get 10, 15 yards upfield will certainly help the averages quite a bit. Haley Tubbs says, I'd be happy with no ghost fumbles this year. Protecting the football is going to be important for sure.
That's those type of things were drive killers last year as well. Really over the last 2 seasons, just inexplicable. Just nobody's there. I mean, I think about the fumble Jarquez Hunter had in the Bama game last year, where it goes off, it hits freaking Shanker when he's trying to go past him and pops up into the air. The multiple times you had where Robbie Ashford's catching a snap and then he just drops the ball. Freaking Tank every now and then just inexplicably dropping something. It wasn't a ghost fumble, but it was just kind of like an unnecessary fumble when you think about the Shed Jackson fumble, late second quarter, Penn State. I can just go down the list of the number of times we put the ball on the ground and it wasn't because the defense made some amazing play. It was just like, what are we thinking about right now, ball security wise?
Todd Jordan says, but can we afford to? Oh, I'm sorry. We already did that one. And Dana Jones' last comment says, did anybody see the article about an anonymous SEC assistant basically passive-aggressively trash-talking Auburn's team and coaching staff? I did not see this. No. Tag us on Twitter, Dana. I'll tell you what, when you're winning at recruiting, this won't shock me. No, I think if you're beating them head to head for recruits, I'm sure there's going to be some complaints coming from the other side or the losing side of the recruiting battle. So Hugh Freeze is out there working on the recruiting trail for sure. We're out here working. Harmon Mechanical is out here working for you as well, too. HarmonMechanical.com, guys. Visit HarmonMechanical.com to get your heating and cooling air needs taken care of this summer. Preventative maintenance sometimes is the best maintenance, man. So let them come out and take a look at it before it breaks down and you are sitting in the heat. Also, definitely want to thank RogueShop.com. RogueShop.com. Use code REPORT for 15% off that next Rogue Shop order. Stress, sleep, anxiety, pain. Rogue Shop has you covered. Visit RogueShop.com and please be sure to let them know the War Report sent you. Guys, we'll be back at you with another drop tomorrow morning, Friday. So please tune in and tag us on social media. Give us your comments, hit the comment section. And as always, hit like and subscribe to help us get traction in that algorithm. We'll be back at you guys tomorrow. Until then, War Eagle.
Peace.
Drop.